On this episode of Hot Rod Hoarders, we visit a small shop that has a bunch of killer stuff in it. We're talking vintage toys, car parts, motorcycle parts, bicycle parts, everything you can think of crammed into a very small place and organized very neatly. Let's check it out. So normally on the Hot Rod Hoarders series, I'm showcasing something that I have bought or me and my dad have bought together. I'm showcasing an old drag car or something of that nature. But this time I wanted to show you somebody else's collection of stuff. And if you like it, I'm going to continue to do that because I know a lot of guys that have a lot of junk. And so we'll check it out if it's something that you like. So give me a thumbs up, give me a comment below, hit the subscribe button, just do something down there to let me know that you like it. And I'll continue shooting this type of thing because, again, lots of guys in this area have lots of cool collections that never get seen. So in this case, this guy is about 30 minutes from me, and my dad actually already knew him, and I didn't get to visit the shop the first time. So my dad had told me about this guy up the road from us who had a collection of toys that you just wouldn't believe. He said he also had a sprint car, and that kind of got my attention because old sprint cars are cool, and they usually have magnesium stuff on them, and I like magnesium wheels and rear ends and all that kind of stuff. So that got my attention, and we never really had an excuse to go back up there. So I'm scrolling Facebook Marketplace, and I find some dragster wheels, some spindle mount 17-inch centerline wheels that are for like a 70s rear engine dragster. So they're a decent price, and they'd been up there a while, so I made them an offer, and they took it. So the lady who had this posted on Facebook, she asked where I was from, and I said Dayton, and she automatically said, oh, well, you've been here before. And I kind of started putting some pieces together that this was the place that had the sprint car and all that. She thought I was my dad, and I kind of told her the situation, and I said, but I do want to bring my dad with me. I want to come back and check out the stuff because my dad was telling me how cool it was. So we worked it out. We went a couple days later to go buy the wheels and check out the collection of stuff. And you know what was really cool to me is, unfortunately, it was dark when we got there because it's winter time and it gets dark before I even get home from work. But we got there, and the place is just really cool. There's lots of antiques and just cool vintage stuff all over the property. We get to the guy's house and go up on his porch, and there's stuff hanging from the rafters, there's stuff hanging on the walls. It's kind of like Cracker Barrel, except way more awesome because it's all stuff that I like. So we go into his house because my dad wanted me to see the collection of toys and vintage cars and things. So we go in his house, and there are cabinets lining the walls that are lit, that you can actually see what he's got in there. Even though it was dark in the house, you could see all of these awesome pieces, toys and gas-powered airplanes, gas-powered dragsters, gas-powered, miniature small things, model cars, die-cast cars, and not just like the stuff you can get at Walmart. Like, this was really vintage, really cool, really expensive stuff. And he had it on display perfectly. It wasn't just piled up. It wasn't just like in a corner gathering dust like our stuff is. This stuff was displayed very nicely. So, it was just cool to see. Like, we walked through his living room, and it's wall to wall. I was checking out some of this stuff, and I turned the corner, and the window out of his living room is a view of his garage, which is actually kind of lower than the house is. And you get this perfect view of his collection out there. So, I'm checking out the model cars and some of the things on display in the case, but I'm really just excited and waiting to go into the garage where the real collection is. So he took us outside. There really wasn't a way to get to the garage from inside the house. He took us outside, and again, it was dark, but he's got sort of a bamboo forest in his backyard, and he had kind of carved a path into this thing and had an old Model A chassis and had motorcycle and bicycles and stuff just kind of strategically placed. Really cool looking display. You know, it's hard to describe and it was really hard to capture in the camera, but it was just really cool. So then we circle around and go into his garage, and it is just, it's epic. I mean, the garage itself, I don't know the square footage, but it's not very big. I mean, he's got that sprint car in there, but you couldn't fit 2 regular sized cars into this garage. And it is wall-to-wall stuff, but again, it's organized. It's not just junk laid up everywhere like what we're used to in our garage. It's all organized. It's all displayed in the proper way so that you can really see it and really appreciate it. And he showed us all sorts of trinkets and little things that he's picked up at estate sales and flea markets and yard sales. And he even has a connection with the local scrapyard. He goes and checks them out occasionally and sees what they've pulled aside for him that people were just going to throw away. They were just going to scrap it and recycle it. And you know, the stuff that he's found through that scrapyard is incredible. So, you know, some examples of things that he has in his collection are model cars. Lots of vintage model cars that are really outstanding. Lots of old drag cars, lots of hot rods and things like that. He's got these gas-powered cars that are extremely rare, extremely valuable. Those are really cool to look at. He's got airplanes, like dozens of airplanes hanging from the rafters. And again, he just has them displayed in such a way that you can actually see them and appreciate them. And you know, it makes me want to be able to do that with our garage, but that would be a lot of work. Anyways, he showed us all of this stuff. I mean, he's got a story for everything because he, you know, his memory is very good, thankfully. He remembers where he got each and every piece, told us the story of all this stuff. And the centerpiece in his garage, in his collection there, is a sprint car. This thing came from the scrapyard. This thing was being thrown away. It was being completely hauled off just for scrap. And if you know anything about race cars, they don't weigh very much. So the guy who was throwing this thing away, he probably was just going to get a few dollars out of it. So the amazing thing to me is that this car was mostly complete. The chassis, suspension, even the rear wheels, which are a Safety Racing Products 2-piece wheel made out of magnesium. It's got a magnesium quick change rear end in it. It's got some killer parts. It's got you know, the steering box and everything in the center is a good piece. Lots of rare stuff front to back on this car. And of course, he had to fill in some gaps. He had to figure out a way to make this car look more complete. So the front wheels aren't exactly correct for a vintage sprint car, but they still look vintage. You know, some of the engine parts aren't exactly correct, but they still look cool. And he's put this thing back together, and it's just a killer piece to be right in the middle of his collection. And you know, I just love this car, and I didn't have enough time to really figure out any real details on the car. He didn't know anything because it came from the scrapyard, but you know, there's got to be some design features on this thing that point it out and could help document it. And of course, I'm a nerd about that kind of stuff, so I would love to find out the history on the car and figure that out. But it was cool enough just to look at it, look at some of those rare vintage speed parts, and you know, just soak in this collection that was just in a place that's even smaller than my little garage here at home. I mean, it was just really amazing to see what a collection looks like that is displayed properly. And you know, it gives me kind of inspiration to do that with mine and my dad's collection, because we've got some cool pieces. We've got some cool old wheels. We've got good old toys, and my dad has an incredible collection of vintage guitars and music equipment. We've got stuff that we can really display, but you know, we just haven't got there yet. We're still dealing with piles of junk at this point. But anyways, this collection just up the road from us, it was just cool to visit. And the guy there, Jimmy, he was just, I mean, super nice, let us check out every piece. I mean, he would have stayed with us there all night if we'd wanted to. So, you know, I was happy to get what I felt like was a good deal on those wheels. We'll put them to use on something, on some of our projects. We'll find a use for them. But the really neat thing was just being able to experience the collection. We just had a great time with Jimmy there in his collection of stuff. You know, he's passionate about it. He's worked for years to collect it, to organize it, and to display it there. So even though he's in a pretty secluded part of the country, and you know, he may not want a lot of visitors, the people that do get to come check out this collection, they should consider it a privilege, because it is just, it's one of the best I've ever seen.